Welcome back to my pro wrestling game retrospective series. In this video, I'll be reviewing the last two games released by World Championship Wrestling in its lifetime, before the company folded in early 2001 and was purchased by their rival, the World Wrestling Federation, ending the historic Monday Night Wars that had begun 6 years prior. The games I am referring to are, of course, WCW Mayhem, that hit store shelves in late 1999, and WCW Backstage Assault in late 2000. Both games were developed by Kodiak Interactive, published by Electronic Arts, and released for the Nintendo 64 and Sony PlayStation. When you boot up Mayhem, you are greeted with by far the weirdest opening cutscene to any wrestling game I've ever played. The tech crew creates Bill Goldberg in their lab. They give him aggression levels the system can't withstand. Their creation breaks free. He attacks one of the technicians with a gorilla press slam, and then runs out into the arena full of screaming fans. What I find so bizarre about it, though, is that the one tech guy orders that the aggression levels be increased because he hears the roar of the crowd and claims they want a monster. But this is after we see that the arena and even the fans themselves are all artificially created by them, along with Goldberg. Why would their opinions even matter? I find this whole cutscene to be really goofy and awkward. It is a humorous analogy for WCW, though. By that point, the company probably wished they could push a button and generate fans. They were bleeding their audience. All jokes aside, WCW Mayhem was the last decent game World Championship Wrestling released before their inevitable demise. In my opinion, it's the best WCW game to release on the PlayStation, which isn't saying much given the dreadful last two I looked at. You can throw a lot of shade on Mayhem for a variety of its issues, mostly gameplay related. It's not a perfect wrestling game by any means, but one thing you can commend it for is its phenomenal visual presentation, some of the best in any wrestling game, even ones released today. Silly-looking fighting stances of the wrestlers aside, the models themselves, the move animations, the dynamic camera angles in and outside the ring, the full entrances with accurate music, the colorful stage designs, the show logos on the ring mats, all of it emulates the look and feel of WCW better than any of the other games that had come out before it, even the ones released exclusively on the N64. Mayhem is one of the most authentic wrestling games ever produced, in my opinion. Its gameplay might not stand up that well compared to the wrestling games of today, but its presentation blows them out of the water. Just listen to these event introductions by Mean Gene, and the fluent and realistic-sounding in-match commentary provided by Tony Schiavone and Bobby Heenan.
Ladies and gentlemen and wrestling fans of all ages, welcome to tonight's worldwide television presentation of Monday Nitro.
His opponent really needs to get some offense going, and I mean now.
Bret Hart is moving to Spike out of the ring. He's a good showman. Let's see if he can finish his opponent.
My favorite way to taunt a guy was to put my thumb in his eye and my other finger in his ear, like a bowling ball.
Goldberg took a nasty hit there. He looks like he's in a lot of pain. I think he's hurt. What are we going to see next?
He's got him on the run now. This match will come down to who wants it more. He's sending a message with that move. Move!
This is unbelievable! Wow, these men are laying it all on the line tonight.
There are a lot of painful holes in wrestling, but nothing like this one.
As great and impressive as the visuals in Mayhem are for late 90s standards, I have to address the game's biggest flaw, the janky hit detection. Wrestlers will punch and kick the air frequently, with their limbs going right through their opponents. Grapples have to be performed at precise moments to allow time for the game to register something as simple as a headlock. I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people make it seem, though. With practice, you can adjust to the timing, and the amount of missed attacks you perform in a match becomes substantially reduced. Even with the poor hit detection, coming off the last several reviews I've done on wrestling games using intricate button combinations to pull off moves, playing WCW Mayhem was a breath of fresh air. I was actually having a bit of fun, and some of my matches were quite entertaining and grand in structure, thanks in part to playing on hard difficulty, with the frequent counters that were happening, turning the tides of battle. Mayhem does its best to try and simplify its controls like the Aki wrestling games on the N64 did. You perform a tie-up by pressing square and then triangle, X, or circle along with left or up or right and down on the D-pad to do various high-impact moves. The move sets are adequately sized. Rear grapples function in a similar way. So do ground attacks, in which case each wrestler has a mixture of strikes and grapples assigned to each of the face buttons. The momentum meter is kind of like the spirit or attitude meters from the Aki games, in that it raises and lowers depending on which wrestler has control of the match. You fill it by successfully landing moves, performing diving attacks, as well as taunting. When your momentum meter is full and flashing, you can perform your wrestler's finishing move by grappling with square and then tapping square again. Every wrestler has a finishing move that's done in front of their opponent, so obviously not all of them are going to be accurate. But if you're playing as wrestlers with diving or submission finishers in real life, these can be performed at any time as regular moves, something to keep in mind. Irish whips are done by pressing square to grapple, and then hitting R1, along with the direction you want to throw your opponent in. Tossing the piece of trash outside the ring is done the same way. Landing rebound moves is kind of a gamble, because sometimes your input of triangle, X, or circle causes you to strike instead of grapple due to the cumbersome hit detection. Picking up weapons is also performed with square, and you guessed it, tapping triangle, X, or circle allows you to do various attacks with them. Using weapons in Mayhem is hilarious, because they completely phase right through your opponent. While I'm on the topic of weapons, there's a nice variety of them in this game. Steel chairs, baseball bats, folding tables, steel grates, garbage bins, even cattle prods. WCW Mayhem was, to my knowledge, the first wrestling game that allowed you to fight in backstage areas. It randomizes which location you get, either the parking lot, ticket booth, or medical room, but all of them have an identical rectangle layout with weapons scattered all over. The only difference is the textures and images seen on the walls, but having this feature in the game is still really cool. I love how it looks as though the live feed has switched over to the security cameras to follow the action that is spilled into the arena. The match types in the game include singles, tag team, triangles, elimination-style four-way dances, and four-man battle royals. The selection is rather limited, but you can adjust the options to have them be falls count anywhere, Raven's rules, no DQ, and weapons. A few of those seem counterintuitive. Tag team matches in Mayhem are weird. You tag in and out by pressing square, but in the one match I had, my partner, who was not the legal man, made the legal wrestler on the opposing side submit, so someone fucked up there. I would have loved to see cage matches and a World War III-esque battle royal make an appearance, but those may have slowed the performance of the game down and caused longer loading times, at least on the PlayStation, so maybe their exclusion was for the best. Mayhem is a clear indicator of all the constant changes that were plaguing WCW programming at the time. They had been bleeding ratings against the WWF, and their desperation was becoming more and more apparent as the weeks and months went by. They had been throwing everything at the wall to see what would stick, but none of it did, and their downward spiral would just get faster and faster. If you go back and re-watch a lot of their weekly episodes, it's shocking World Championship Wrestling was on top as long as they were. They had strong characters, strong performers, but their production value was far worse than the Federation's. Their booking decisions were baffling. Aside from their highly exciting cruiserweight division, their main event scene was piss poor. Far too often, big matches, even at pay-per-views, ended in disappointing, unsatisfying, controversial, or convoluted ways. In April of 1999, the marketing team of WCW felt that the promotion's logo, as well as the logo for Monday Nitro, needed a graphical overhaul. The iconic and straightforward logo the company had used for over 10 years was replaced by one that then-President Eric Bischoff hated and has since referred to as a cat's butthole. Fitting. The once glorious and eye-popping set for Nitro became a dark and drab-looking one in this new and so-called improved era. When these changes happened, I think a lot of the energy and personality the show had emitted for years was completely drained from it. It's safe to assume that many longtime viewers changed the channel and never returned. I have good news though. You can wrestle in the classic Nitro set in Mayhem by simply typing in a cheat code. Mayhem was the only WCW game to offer all the weekly show arenas, Monday Nitro, Thursday Thunder, and WCW Saturday Night. For the pay-per-views, you have all of them from the 1999 calendar year: Sold Out, Super Brawl, Uncensored, Spring Stampede, Slamboree, Great American Bash, Bash at the Beach, Road Wild, Fall Brawl, Halloween Havoc, and of course, Starrcade. None of them are based on any particular incarnation of the events, and much like Inland's Nitro and Thunder, the developers at Kodiak Interactive took liberties and made their own unique versions of them in Mayhem. Some of them look great, others not so much. World War III is also featured in this game, though the last installment of it had taken place the year prior. Strangely, despite the game being called Mayhem and using the logo for the event of the same name that debuted in November of '99, you can't wrestle in the venue, though it is visible in the background of the menu screens. Odd. The roster in Mayhem is solid. Over 50 competitors broken up into the various factions, yet again, like in past games. The NWO, Cruiserweights, Four Horsemen, Hardcore Division, and the rest of WCW that didn't really have any specific affiliation. The whole faction thing was getting long in the tooth, though. The New World Order storyline was, painfully, still trudging along. In 1998, the Angle would be given a bit more life when the group was splintered into two opposing factions: the heel NWO Hollywood and babyface Red and Black NWO Wolfpack. As popular as the Wolfpack was, it didn't change the fact that the NWO branding was oversaturating every facet of WCW programming. The formation of the Wolfpack was really just a consolation prize after the true ending of the Angle at Starrcade 97 failed to materialize the way many of us believe it should have. And as cool as his red and black gear and face paint was, Sting, being a member of any incarnation of the NWO, felt like a cardinal sin given what the vigilante represented in the company the year prior. It was like Batman walking around with a shirt that said the Joker rules. Mayhem was released in late 1999, and by then, the founding members of NWO Hollywood and the NWO Wolfpack had reunited to form a new group called the NWO Elite, following the infamous Finger Poke of Doom on the January 4th episode of Monday Nitro. So in the game, you've got all the main event level members, including Hall, Nash, and Hogan, filed under the NWO Wolfpack Wolfpack, really the NWO Elite, and then all the B-listers that never officially integrated with the rest of them placed under the old NWO black and white banner. And man, how pathetic is this list? Stevie Ray, Horace Hogan, Scott Norton, and Eric Bischoff. That's it. It's like the black and white colors were poison, and everyone piled on top of what was left. What was still popular, the NWO Wolfpack, before running that into the ground as well. The main game mode in Mayhem is Quest for the Best, which has you move up the rankings, winning various championships in WCW. I wish I had more to say about it, but it gets extremely repetitive and boring. Unfortunately, it's how you unlock all of the hidden wrestlers in the game, but thankfully, you can enter a cheat code to save yourself a hell of a lot of time. I should quickly mention that there is a cheat that allows you to play as Masked Rey Mysterio Jr. The default version of him in this game is during the period of his career when he was a member of the Filthy Animals, alongside Eddie Guerrero, Conan, and Billy Kidman. I'm not going to deny that WCW Mayhem is a bit of a clunky mess bell to bell, but something I am not ashamed to admit is that WCW Mayhem is one of my favorite wrestling games to play. It's definitely a guilty pleasure of mine. I think its presentation and simple control scheme more than make up for its bad hit detection, which once again can be easily overcome with practice. For the most part, I think Mayhem is an underappreciated gem. Kodiak Interactive laid a solid foundation with it that their future wrestling games could build upon. They'd be able to iron out the kinks and provide WCW fans an even more exceptional experience with their next title, one that could hypothetically give the WWF's SmackDown series on the PlayStation a run for its money. Sadly, Mayhem's sequel, Backstage Assault, didn't live up to any of this. It shit the bed astronomically. WCW Backstage Assault is a very strong contender for being the worst professional wrestling game ever made, definitely the worst released by a major promotion. Rarely on my channel do the games I play for it feel like a chore. This one definitely did. At first glance, you wouldn't expect it to be as bad as it is. The menu presentation is halfway decent. The background music is also great, a mixture of catchy WCW theme songs, like an instrumental of the Filthy Animals' Psycho, for example. But once you start up a match, if you want to call them that in this game, you bear witness to some of the most disgraceful, borderline offensive character models you have ever seen. You thought Mayhem was rough around the edges in terms of hit detection. Backstage Assault is somehow worse. Comparing the quality of these games is like night and day. They clearly ran out of time with this one. It's a rush job. The controls are taken right out of Mayhem, and a lot of the animations for the moves are as well. They aren't terrible to look at, and I even like how the wrestler's hands will tap out in a submission hold. I don't know how many wrestling games had this feature in them back then. It's just that, in order to perform any of the grapples, it feels like you have to be smooshed right up next to your opponent to have any of them register. Moves and weapon strikes will frequently glitch out. You'll go to hit your opponent and find yourself being immediately struck by some mysterious ghostly object as well. The environments you fight in look okay, but the presentation as a whole in Backstage Assault is just awful. I think Kodiak Interactive was given very little time and money to work on this one, unlike Mayhem, and it shows. They must have rushed it out the door with barely any testing or bug fixing. You might be wondering why all of the footage you have been seeing doesn't include a traditional wrestling ring. Well, Backstage Assault doesn't have any to speak of. Remember the backstage areas in Mayhem that I praised? Well, critics did too when the game came out, which is why Kodiak Interactive decided to put all their eggs in the backstage basket. Hardcore wrestling had become increasingly popular in the late 90s and into the 2000s. Backstage Assault was a way for WCW to cash in on its newfound success. I give Kodiak some credit. This was definitely a new approach to everything, not something that had been attempted before in the pro wrestling game genre. It was rather ambitious as well, because all of the backstage areas you can fight in this game are connected by side rooms behind loading screens. As you move through them, it's like you were actually battling throughout an entire sports arena, and each of the locations have some variety to them. They're not always simple rectangles like they were in Mayhem. Each section has unique weapons you can find, a few gimmicks you can uncover, and objects that you can jump off of. A lot of other wrestling games that came out around this period, even some released now, would kill to have this much freedom and variety to their backstage areas in matches that involve hardcore brawling. Even the SmackDown games that offered these kinds of expansive backstage areas on the PS1 didn't allow you to set your opponent on fire, for example. And blood. There's blood in Backstage Assault too. But I'm implying that all of this be supplementary to traditional wrestling matches in a wrestling ring. As ambitious as a lot of this stuff was, it alienated fans of the genre who buy wrestling games to, wrestle. I don't think any gamers alive wanted this. They didn't want to turn their backs completely on arcade-like simulation of the real thing. The backstage focus this game has is a detriment to it in so many ways. Match types are very limited, only one-on-one encounters, and the additional match settings you can choose from only include whether or not you want submissions, knockouts, or first blood. The WWF games were demolishing the WCW ones at this point in terms of match variety. The amount here in Backstage Assault is just laughable. Because there is no wrestling ring, because you can only have singles bouts, this game becomes tiresome to play. Every match, and up until now, I have been hesitant to call them that. They're really just brawls, feel the exact same. There isn't enough nuance to them, and what you are doing within them. You basically just land a few moves, hit some finishers, and smack your opponent with a bunch of weapons until they are at critical, at which point you win by pinfall or submission unless they have been knocked out beforehand. Same old shit over and over. There is fluent commentary from Tony Schiavone and Bobby Heenan, just like in Mayhem, which helps its presentation a little bit. The commentary is better than most wrestling games that come out today, but a lot of their lines are reused from the last game. There's not enough new material. Behind every wrestler on the selection and versus screens, you can see the logos for various pay-per-view events, arenas you wish were featured in this game that you could wrestle in. Backstage Assault was just a misguided idea from the start. The game desperately needed a wrestling ring in it. It is considered to be one of the worst wrestling games ever made, but that's the thing. Personally, I don't consider Backstage Assault to be a wrestling game at all, not without a traditional ring. It's a backstage fighting game that just so happens to have professional wrestlers in it. And let's not kid ourselves here. Even if the game did feature a wrestling ring, the show arenas and whatnot, it would still be a steaming pile of shit. The core gameplay and visuals are too poor of quality that having those elements would do very little to improve the final product. The primary game mode in Backstage Assault is Hardcore Challenge. It has 3 difficulties, easy, medium, and hard, depending on which title you are pursuing. The Hardcore, Television, or Heavyweight. You play through a series of backstage brawls starting in the truck arena, and then make your way through connecting rooms of your choice against new opponents until you find yourself back in the truck arena for the title fight. Depending on which difficulty you choose will determine the total number of matches you have in this mode. Hardcore Challenge is how you unlock most of the extra wrestlers in this game by doing special objectives, like setting an opponent on fire or knocking them out with a specific weapon. Honestly, it's a neat idea. Before each match, the loading screen for the given area gives you tips on ways to damage your opponent. Many of them go without saying, and some are just sad puns that don't offer any useful insight whatsoever. These loading screen tips are a complete waste. Each difficulty has bonus wrestlers that can be matched up with you at random, and if you beat them, you unlock them as well. Getting these wrestlers can be a pain because, like I said, it's random. Best strategy with this is just start up a hardcore challenge mode on whatever difficulty you need, and then exit if your first match isn't with the wrestler you are missing. I ended up doing this after I had played through the mode numerous times. I wasn't willing to just wait until they popped up naturally. I have far better shit to do. Unfortunately, a few of the wrestlers are also unlocked by playing the other mode in the game, Hardcore Gauntlet. This one sucks asshole through a straw. It's a slog. 7 straight battles in a row. It gets very repetitive. You can't save in between matches. Losing forces you to restart, and playing this one on hard difficulty is just not fun at all. Thankfully, there are cheats you can activate that make weapons unbreakable and give you unlimited stamina. Just like Hardcore Challenge, after a few legit playthroughs, I didn't give a shit how I was beating them anymore. You try playing this piece of garbage for multiple hours. I fucking dare you. WCW was a sinking ship when Backstage Assault came out. The game was released a few months before the promotion closed its doors for good. What you're looking at here is the fully unlocked roster. During the end of the game's development window, the company-wide New Blood vs. Millionaires Club storyline was happening, where the younger wrestlers in WCW began feuding with the older ones who they claimed were holding them back. It was really just a regurgitated faction war storyline again, with a new coat of paint, further evidence that the creative force behind World Championship Wrestling was hemorrhaging in every conceivable way. By this point, former WWF writer Vince Russo was in charge of booking as well. Matches were being filled to the brim with run-ins and stupid gimmicks. WCW's buyout in 2001 was a mercy killing. Backstage Assault has nearly 60 playable wrestlers in it, and each of them have 4 attires to choose from, unlocked by winning a title in the Hardcore Challenge mode with them. But these attires are just as shitty as the wrestler models themselves. It's not like their base appearances improve in any way just by changing clothes, and who in their right mind would want to play through the challenge mode that many times with each wrestler to unlock them all? You'd have to be a fucking masochist to do something like that to yourself. Backstage Assault does feature a few female competitors, but I find it disconcerting seeing these ladies smack each other around with weapons backstage. This catfight approach hasn't aged well. This was long before women in wrestling were given any sort of meaningful respect for their abilities. They were just glorified strippers back then. WCW Backstage Assault is an absolute joke of a game. The only reason any of you out there should ever, and I mean ever, play it would be for sick curiosity, and that's it. But realize, it's not fun, it's ugly, it's bland, it feels rushed and incomplete. You'll pop it in and be bored within minutes, I guarantee you. You might laugh at first, but after a while, you start feeling pretty slimy. I wanted to go have a shower when everything was said and done. Personal opinions of Mayhem and Backstage Assault aside, they did signify the end of a unique era in professional wrestling history, though World Championship Wrestling still lives on in video game form, thanks to its talented fans and the advancements with create modes within these kinds of games throughout the years. Mayhem and Backstage Assault were the last 2 official WCW games that came out during the Monday Night War, and when WCW was still an active promotion, so I figure they do have a soft spot in our hearts a little. Though Mayhem is the only one that deserves praise, I think it's underrated and still entertaining to play. Backstage Assault can go fuck itself wholeheartedly. I want to thank you all for watching this installment of my Pro Wrestling Game Retrospective series. I'll be back with another one of these soon, so stay tuned for that. If you'd like to show your support and help me keep the lights on with this channel, you can do so by subscribing, hitting that bell icon for notifications, and by becoming a producer and nominating video topics over on Patreon. I will see you all in the next one. Take care,